I'd like to discuss about what alternatives we have, we can use as authentication and authorization providers in the cloud, and also some open source alternatives. And in the end, I'd like to go, since my most experience has been on Cognito recently, I'd like to go to AWS console and show you a small demo of how we can create an authentication provider and use it to retrieve access tokens. So, we are coming into a world of authentication service providers, and here terminology is a bit, interchangeably used, so it can be confusing. So authentication service provider refers to an entity provides authentication service, as the name implies. And sometimes you hear identity and access management. This used to be mostly for employees in the past, and like in an organization, I mean, like Active Directory or LDAP in the company. But these days, it started to be used as also an authentication framework at all. Also, you'll hear identity provider, which is mostly the OpenID provider, which uses OpenID Connect to make the authorization and authentication. Sorry. So we have many auth providers is being used in production these days, and I'd like to discuss a bit briefly about them. The most commonly used is, I think, if I'm not wrong, Auth0, which is owned by Okta. Okta is a company very, specified on security, and Auth0 is widely preferred by big companies. They have good support, good documentation, but it comes with, of course, a higher price. And we have Firebase Auth, which is Google's alternative for authentication providers. And Google also has in GCP identity platform. I think these are being merged these days, Firebase Auth and identity platform, but I don't want to go into detail here since we have Google experts, and I don't want to confuse things. So I have limited knowledge on this one. Clerk is also getting attention these days, getting some investments. It is also a SaaS solution for authentication. Keycloak is different here. It is actually an open source solution for authentication, and I wanted to put here as an alternative because sometimes you want to have much more control on your authentication mechanism, and this is what Keycloak provides you. But you need to set it up. You need to have your own container and such setup for Keycloak. So it offers more customization, but it comes more with management drawbacks. So this is a decision. Cognito, which will go into detail a bit later on, is Amazon's alternative. I will talk about it in a bit, so just passing it. And we have Super Tokens and nHost. These are also, again, authentication providers that you can use. It depends on what you need. If you're looking for a cheaper alternative, Cognito is very generous about it. It has 50,000 monthly active users that you can use up to free. So as I said, it depends. So let's go into Cognito a bit here. So as I said, Cognito is the alternative authentication provider for Amazon, AWS. And it has pros and cons I want to discuss a bit. As pros, Cognito has secure passwords. You don't you don't have access to passwords of the user's passwords because it is kept somewhere hidden from you, and with hash algorithms and such. So you don't have any chance to access any kind of password. Of course, this comes with some drawbacks. For example, if you happen to migrate your users somewhere else, you need to ask your users to reset their passwords since you don't have any access. And it has support for lots of things. OAuth, SAML is something we didn't discuss. You can think of it as an XML version of OAuth framework, and I'm not very familiar with it, but it is more widely used in companies, in intranet, inside the company authentication. Also, you can select third-party providers incognito to use for signing, such as Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and lots of providers these days. Very easy of integration if your infrastructure is happen to be in AWS, if you are using AWS resources already. And easy and well-guided setup, as I will show you in a bit. You can just easily configure your provider. And you will find many SDKs for many languages to use inside your applications. Many more like .NET, Java, Go, and a lot more, even Python. Sorry. And it has some cons, of course. And recently we transferred our infrastructure to Cognito, and limited customization was something very challenging because it forces you to not go out of the standards, and less customization. And if you happen to have a customized solution, legacy solution, then you will face challenges. User pool is something I will talk a bit later on, but it is where users are. And you need to have your user pool definitions very well intact from the beginning, because it is very hard to change the user pool configuration after the creation and after you import your users. And if you are using external cloud services, the integration could be a bit cumbersome. So I'd like to go into AWS console here and sign in to show you a bit of how you can set up Cognito. See, okay, I already had my session there, so we jumped and signed in. So these are my recently visited. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with AWS console, so I will just write down Cognito here if you are happen to log in first time, and you get into the this screen with empty nothing for the first time. User pool is, as I mentioned, is the place where you hold all of your users in AWS Cognito. And we have another small item here next. It is federated identities. I'm not going to go into detail. There are two items important in Cognito, which is one is the identity pool, other one is user pool. Identity pool is basically for if you want your users have access to AWS resources, like such as some kind of S3 bucket or any other resources directly to client application. You will need to define this identity pool. But I will mostly focus on user pools here. So let's go and create a user pool. Sign-in experience is the first step here. As I mentioned, you can configure other identity providers for sign-in, but I will just go our Cognito user pool as the authentication provider. And I will make our users sign in with their email. You can select a couple of options here, but let's keep them simple. Password policy is, as all of you know, is having special characters and such as things. MFA is really advised to have in production because it adds another nice layer of security to the authentication, which is the second step with your SMS or email verification code. But I won't be using it. User account recovery is when the account is lost. If you enable self-registration, Cognito also creates a sign-up URL, sign-up page that you can use from the authentication provider. I will go through these a bit, not to in since we are time sensitive. Okay, I will have, you can, for the sign up, you can select attributes here for the user. Standard attributes here, and I will just click to name and maybe gender, just to make the sign up easy. And custom attributes you can add, probably you will need these for your users in your organization, but I'm not adding any right now. For the verification of the user, Cognito sends an email, a verification to add code to the email that is signed up. So this is the configuration page for it. I will just use the Cognito as the email provider for the development purposes. So we need to enter a user pool name here. So I will just put DevStaff test. Cognito hosted UI is the one I mentioned in OAuth slide. The authentication provider has its own web page that you can access for the sign-in. So hosted UI will be this web page. It has a predefined web page that is generated, and later on you can add custom CSS and change the style of the UI as you wish, but it has a standard default. This is the domain definition that the hosted UI will stand on. So I will just name it like this. So we will have it here. Application client is something you need to define for example, you have web client, mobile client, and TV client. For each of these clients that will have access, you should define a separate application client. Confidential client is for machine-to-machine communication, client credentials. So let's put a name here. We don't need a client secret since it will be a public client that will be accessed through browser. For callback URL, I will put a local host here because I will use this debugger for authorization code grant I have in my local right now. This is a GitHub repository you can access. I've also put it in the slide. It will have a container. You will just call Docker Compose and it will be ready. So it has a page for the debugging the authorization. So since it is in my local host right now for testing purposes, I added localhost as the callback URL. And one last check of what we have configured. And let's create the user pool now. Okay, so we have a user pool now, and we have user pool ID. Let's copy it and have it somewhere. We have no users, as you can see right now, and we have a couple of information about our user pool. So after you create the user pool, Amazon Cognito automatically defines you a URL that you can access like this with a GET request to the user pool URLs. See, we have authorization endpoint, issuer, the keys URL. You will need this when you are defining on resource server. And token endpoint and such, we have a couple of URLs that will be needed. So with these URLs, let's try to create, let's try to do a login here to our Cognito pool using authorization endpoint here. And I will copy the token endpoint. This is the same as I showed in the OAuth playground. This is just a simpler version. And we have client ID here. We need to take it from here. So enter the client ID. And, you know, as I said, we could ask for scopes. We configured it like this, but we could remove all of the scopes and Cognito would return a default scope here. and doesn't allow to ask for scopes. So our URL is ready. So let's call authorize. Sorry, I think I copied something wrong. Let's get back into our callback URL. Oh, sorry, I added HTTPS, so that's why it is not allowing the callback URL here. So I need to remove this one. Sorry about it. So now we have the exact callback URL. And let's call. So, okay, and now this is the hosted UI, as I mentioned, that Cognito created for us, but we have no user. So quickly sign up our user. But, okay. So I will enter my email here. So let's say mail, name, and put some kind of password quickly. Call sign up. So as you can see here, Cognito sent me a confirmation code automatically without minimum configuration. And after we confirm our account, we can see my user here. So it is now added to the user pool. So also this callback URL, as you can see in the, I'm not sure if you can see very well, but returned an authorization code for us. So I will call this authorization code, use this authorization code to complete our access token flow. We don't have any client secret here. Sorry, I will need to show some debugger tools here for the ID token because it does not show the ID token. So see, we have received our, it doesn't show the ID token, but we also received the ID token here. This is for the OpenID scope. And if you go to JWT.io, you will see all related information to my user here with the ID token, so clients can use this. So that was it for me. Sorry for going over the time a bit. I tried to be quick, but that's it for the Cognito. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
I'd like to hear if you have any questions, but I'm not sure if we are over time a bit, I guess.
By the way, we should have asked for a sponsorship from AWS as well for this work.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much. Now I am stopping.